Right now, I want to welcome to the program Second Amendment attorney and scholar Steve Hallbrook, who was in court yesterday representing some FFLs in border states who are challenging this new extra congressional regulation by the Obama administration that requires them to report every time somebody walks in and over a 5-day period buys more than one rifle or a shotgun. Steve, thanks so much for coming on the program tonight.
Oh, always my pleasure.
So what can you tell us about this hearing yesterday? This took place in D.C.?
Yes, it was before U.S. District Judge Collier, and we were in court for 2 hours. I represent J&G Sales and Foothills Firearms of Arizona, and also the National Shooting Sports Foundation has a lawsuit which is consolidated with ours. And the defendant is the director of the ATF. And, of course, as you know, ATF imposed a rule that dealers in the 4 border states with Mexico have to report 2 or more sales within a 5-day period of any rifle that's semi-auto and over a .22 caliber. Report that to ATF without any evidence of any wrongdoing. I mean, these are people who have passed the background check. And the hearing went very, very well. The district judge had studied the materials and asked some very hard questions to both sides. She was very fair. And I think we've talked about this case before, the fact that the Firearms Owners Protection Act does not allow ATF just to randomly collect information like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a specific requirement for 2 or more pistols or revolvers being sold, that those have to be reported if it's within a 5-day period. That should tell you that Congress decided not to impose that for rifles, and yet that's exactly what ATF is imposing. And some of the hard questions she asked the assistant U.S. attorney were, well, if you can do it in 4 states, could you do it in several more states? Could you do it in all 50 states? Where's the end of this? And in fact, I added, well, what about all rifles and all shotguns, all firearms, whatever? And the real bombshell, though, was the following. She said to the assistant U.S. attorney that, well, there's, she didn't use this term, but there's an elephant in the kitchen, Fast and Furious.
So she actually brought up Fast and Furious.
Oh, yes. And she said, what about the fact that the ATF had a program going where they intentionally let large quantities of firearms, quote, walk, unquote, past the dealer into Mexico, and there's obviously investigations about that going on, and what can you tell me about that? And he kind of stuttered around and seemed very awkward and like, I really wish I wasn't here. And in fact, he represented that, oh, well, that's only a small proportion, and it's not really relevant to this case. And she said, oh yeah, I want a written communique from an ATF official saying that, verifying what you're telling me. Because you know and I know, and the listeners here know that, what is it, 1,800 guns they let walk, something like that?
At least, yeah.
And they're trying to blame this on the gun dealers. And so that was a real bombshell that she brought that up. And, I mean, we were nice lawyers. We were arguing the legal niceties of the case.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, wait a minute, there's something bigger going on here. And we're very, very pleased. I never want to predict the outcome of a case, but we left there having the feeling that she really understands the case, and we're optimistic.
You know, I was looking over the Associated Press report on this, and at one point, I guess the judge asked, "All right, well, will the ATF have the authority to require stores to report when somebody buys 30 guns, or 50 guns, or 75 guns?" What was your response, Steve?
I said no. Congress has mandated a program where 2 or more pistols or revolvers are reported. They've not mandated that for guns. The only reason they can get into the records is for a trace, for a bona fide criminal investigation, not for a fishing expedition.
Mm-hmm.
If Congress wants to have such a reporting requirement, if 50 rifles are sold, they can do it. But as I told the court, these are policy arguments. This discussion needs to be going on before the Senate Judiciary Committee or in debate on the House floor. This is not a matter for the courts to deal with, for ATF to impose this basically legislation that Congress should be passing if they want to do something like this, and they haven't done this. So,
well, absolutely right. And you know, I think, Steve, that the administration knew that Congress had no interest in passing a regulation or changing the law to allow this, which is why the administration simply bystepped Congress and tried to do it on its own.
well, there was a few months ago there was a GAO report suggesting a number of steps that ATF might consider, and that was one of them, to require multiple rifle sale reports. And ATF itself responded that it's unclear that we have statutory authority to do that. And the reason it's clear that the Firearms Owners Protection Act says that dealers have to maintain records that regulations require, but that no other record keeping shall be required unless it's explicitly imposed. And what record keeping is required by the Gun Control Act? Well, it's multiple sales. It's responding to a trace request within 24 hours. But that requires a bona fide criminal investigation. You can't just do it out of the air.
Mm-hmm.
Turn in the records when you go out of business and things like that. And there's a regulation requiring that the dealer keep records of sales, obviously, the 4473 and all that. But there's no requirement either by law or regulation that they keep records showing time periods in which rifles are sold to the same person. So if Congress wants to impose this, they're free to have that debate and consider it. But ATF doesn't have legal authority to do this.
So when do you think, Steve, will the next thing we see in this case be the judge's decision?
Well, we do expect a decision. Before that decision, she's ordered ATF to file something, making some kind of statement to back up their attorney's claim that the number of guns that they let walk to Mexico are insignificant compared to those sold by dealers. And here's something else going on in this case that our listeners ought to know about, because you hear this all the time that, well, 80%, 90% of the guns that are seized and traced in Mexico are traced back to U.S. dealers. Well, they only trace guns that have U.S. markings. They're not going to trace the gun that says HO in Mexico, made in Mexico,
right,
or made in South Korea. They're not going to trace an unmarked gun because it's sent there or smuggled there from North Korea or from Venezuela. And then even with U.S. guns, it could be an M16 from the Vietnam era or from the Civil War in El Salvador. We sent a whole bunch of them down there. Or they could be exported to the Mexican government for use of its military and police, and corrupt persons in the government transfer these guns to the cartels.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just borders on the fraudulent to use that kind of statistic and cooking of the books and say, oh yeah, the great percentage of the ones that we traced go back or trace back to dealers. Well, of course, they're the ones that we know came from the U.S. because it says "Made in USA."
Right. And this is, so this is something that the administration is still pursuing. 2 years after they started with the myth of the 90%, they're still pushing it.
Oh, absolutely, and it just keeps getting worse as far as what's coming out with Fast and Furious. As you know, there's been calls for the Attorney General Holder to resign. He acts like he didn't know anything about it, in which case he would be incompetent. Or if he did know a lot about it, then he's sanctioning what has been called felony criminal or stupid or something like that. I mean, this is the most idiotic idea you could imagine, and that's why it's greatly upset those ATF agents who are interested in real law enforcement. They were basically being told to let the law be broken and let criminals get away. They didn't like that.
Yeah.
Some of them were spoken up.
All right. Well, Steve, any idea when we might get a decision from the judge in this case?
Well, I can't predict when it will come. I would say it would be within a few months. I mean, you just don't know. Our Heller 2 case, we argued that last November in the D.C. Circuit, and it was on last month. I do expect something sooner than 9 or 10 or 12 months, but that's yet to be seen.
All right. Well, listen, Steve, again. Yeah, go ahead.
You'll be the first to know.
Well, probably not the first, but I hope that you'll give me a call, and we'll have you back on. I'm sure we'll be talking before then. Steve, thanks again for coming on the show tonight. Always good talking to you, sir.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure. Take care.